Story 1. When you stop talking, you start assuming. Once you assume, you often assume the worst. Then it becomes scary to speak, and you speak even less. Resentment grows, and it becomes increasingly difficult to find your way back. Talk to each other even when it is hard. Story 2. Silence itself. Not speaking up when necessary and being unable to express how we feel. Story 3. Laziness, not planning dates, not spending time together, and not working as a team on housework. Story 4. Disrespect can come out in many different ways. Not truly listening when your partner is upset. Story 5. Not recognizing bids. Couples will often make small bids for attention to each other, such as asking a question, making a gesture, giving a look, or sending a text message. A partner can either turn toward the bid and engage with it or turn away from the bid and ignore it or directly reject it. Couples who stayed together for 7 or more years turned toward one another 80 to 90% of the time. Couples who divorced responded to bids less often. This research is discussed in books by John Gottman, including The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. Story 6. No more communication, joint activities, goals, or dreams. Story 7. Contempt is usually silent. Relationships can survive anger just fine, but cannot survive it. Story 8. Resentment builds for several reasons, but it mainly stems from a lack of equity in the relationship. A common reason for divorce, as cited by therapists, is when one person becomes the default partner. That person takes on the bulk of adult responsibilities and mundane tasks, for example, planning trips, making appointments, filing taxes, doing the laundry, buying groceries, and paying bills on time, while the other person skates by like an oblivious child, free of the mental load and stress. Story 9. Silently losing respect for the person and experiencing a lack of healthy communication. Story 10. Being too preoccupied with screens to pay attention to their partner. Story 11. We set expectations for the other person without telling them, silently watch them fail at a game they never knew the rules to, and build resentment that eventually leads to indifference. Story 12. Lack of communication, apathy, stonewalling, and passive aggressiveness. Story 13. The novelty wears off and people mistake it for falling out of love. Story 14. Passiveness. When a couple says, "Oh, we never fight," that raises a red flag for me. I'm not talking about big fights where you scream and throw things, but you never disagree on anything. No. Story 15. A lack of communication, disguised as, "I'm just tired every day." Story 16. Expectations. It is good to have expectations for yourself, such as wanting a partner who is kind and wants similar things. But it is easy to set someone up to fail by holding them to impossible or contradictory standards, like expecting someone to earn a lot while working very little or to stay perfectly thin while eating out every night. The more you do that, the more you will treat the relationship like a constant test the other person is always failing. My friends want to buy a house, so they both have to work hard while raising a family. I rarely see them, but they work together to balance demanding jobs, family, children, personal goals, and friendships. They refuse to fail on their marriage or on each other. One switched jobs several times. She did not judge him and picked up the slack during his downtimes. At any point she could have said, "I am married to an unemployed person who cannot hold a job. My friends are doing better. I am the breadwinner and he is just watching the kids while I work overtime." And many people would have taken her side. She could have berated or criticized him, and that might have damaged their relationship over something he could not provide. Instead, she stayed reasonable, understood the reality of marriage and job seeking, and supported him. A few years later, he landed a strong opportunity that moved them closer to their goal. Because she waited and they figured it out together, they were able to thrive. See the person for who they are and what they bring to your life. No one person can give you everything. Decide whether the person you are with can give you enough and whether you can give them enough, or whether you can do it together. It is a balance between expectations and reality. Story 17. If their friends do not like you, they can spread malicious rumors and destroy the relationship without you even knowing anything is wrong. Story 18. Putting yourself before your partner too much. I am not saying you should put them before you, but I put my partner on my level because, for me, the point of a relationship is building a life together. Your experience may vary, and that is okay. Story 19. When discussing problems in friendships, people often tell others, and the issue grows like a snowball. Story 20. Communication is one thing, but actually listening to understand is another. Story 21. Look to your parents. It's very likely that you learned relationship patterns from them. These patterns are underlying and difficult to see and identify. They are so ingrained they are almost impossible to undo. They don't show up during the falling in love stage. They begin to appear in the next stage when you're trying to figure out if you actually have anything in common. Common areas include dealing with money, parenting, sexual intimacy, amount of time spent together, procrastination on projects, what to watch on television, food preferences, housework, and yard work. You get the idea. Both partners have to engage in this process, even if you don't think you have any issues. Hi, I'm B. Yes, I'm a shrink. But that's not why I know this stuff. I am divorced and alone. I've had more relationships than I can count. This is all first-hand knowledge. Good luck to all of you. Go Mariners. Story 22. Family. When you enter a serious relationship with someone who has a close family, you become tied to that family as well, which can create extra obligations during vacations, birthdays, and holidays. Story 23. Poor speaking and listening skills. Rigidity. Expecting others to mind read or to do exactly what you would do, assuming your way is the only right way. Story 24. Resentment, lack of respect, and competition undermine teamwork. By competition, I mean needing the last word, insisting you have it worse, and demanding the final say. If you are not a team, you will not make it. Story 25. Communication and comprehension problems, holding grudges, a tit-for-tat attitude, lack of trust, unmet expectations and boundaries, carelessness, lack of respect, and conditional honesty are silent killers of relationships. Story 26. Hormones. Most people fall in love because of brain chemistry. The brain stops producing those hormones after about 1 year, maybe 2. After that, most couples break up. Story 27. This may be a generalization, but I would call it letting things slide. If something bothers you, make it clear and take steps to prevent it. Both of you are responsible for ensuring you are okay with what happens in your day-to-day lives. Story 28. Honesty. Telling the truth and being grown up enough to hear it are essential to long, happy years. In big things and small, it is very important and would prevent many cases of cheating and divorce. Story 29. Nothing says I love you like trying to compete with your partner. Story 30. Not being honest by hoping the other person will simply stop doing something that hurts you. Story 31. Not having separate lives as individuals with rich inner worlds. Story 32. A lack of respect, poor communication, and not being genuine friends. Story 33. Silence and lack of communication are the death knell of any relationship. Story 34. Lack of communication, avoidance, and failure to spend meaningful time together. Story 35. Disrespect, selfishness, declining communication, one-sided effort, and lack of prioritization. Story 36. Spending time together, but all you are doing is coexisting. Story 37. Selfishness moves mostly in silence, creates gaps in communication, and then blindsides you. Story 38. Lack of communication and financial disagreements or difficulties. Story 39. Unrealistic expectations coupled with mismatched communication styles. Story 40. What isn't? Lack of sex, money problems, parenting differences, long work hours, and home care issues. It's all under the surface until it's not. Then kaboom. Story 41. I was the cowardly cunt, waiting for her to break up so I would not feel guilty. Story 42. Benign neglect is refusing to help your spouse with things that are important to them. It is refusing to take the weight off them because you are comfortable and do not want to change. It is always those people who say they did not see it coming or that she never told them she was upset when she has been begging for help. Story 43. You can be great at communicating, a world-class lover, a provider or caretaker, full of love and affection, funny, charismatic, and generous. If your partner is selfish, there is little you can do. No amount of giving is ever enough. Story 44. When you take each other for granted, you stop appreciating the little things and love fades quietly. Story 45. Lack of communication disguised as I am just tired every day. Story 46. Sex. Too little, too much, too kinky, too vanilla. With the wrong people, the wrong gender, the wrong husband, or the wrong wife. Story 47. The Santa Claus Clause. People say Santa is a myth but worship a god built on the same idea. A figure who watches from above, rewarding the good and punishing the bad. The constructs are parallel. One is sacred and the other childish. To believe in one and mock the other exposes faith's selective logic. Story 48. I have the urge to talk all the time. My boyfriend and I walk to class together. Sometimes we talk, and sometimes we just hold each other's hand in complete silence. Either way, I love his company, silence or not. Story 49. Anthrax is fairly silent. Carbon dioxide poisoning can be similarly quiet. Story 50. There is a lack of attraction. They are only together because they were both too nice to go their separate ways after the first few dates. Story 51. Not making an effort to understand and acknowledge how the other person feels, especially when you are feeling frustrated, upset, or unhappy yourself. Two people can be upset at the same time, but just because one person is expressing their feelings more loudly does not mean the other is feeling fine. Story 52. Complacency, unspoken expectations, and reluctance to compromise. The list could continue. Story 53. Lack of transparency and being secretive about things that should not be hidden in a relationship. Story 54. People think that someone has to be right or wrong instead of holding space for all feelings and moods. Story 55. Forgetting your friends during the first months or even years of a relationship can leave you with nobody to go out with except your partner. That can really kill the romantic mood and freshness. Story 56. Not being united as a family team even before children arrive. Story 57. Poor emotional intelligence, lack of communication, and an unwillingness by both parties to reflect and identify what they could change. Story 58. The lack of communication creates misunderstandings on both sides. Story 59. The unresolved first fight resurfaces repeatedly. There is also a poor understanding of boundaries and a refusal to maintain them. Story 60. Not being able to tell your partner exactly how you feel or what you think because they get but hurt. Story 61. Mine was almost always sex. I am basically on the asexual spectrum but realized very late because I find women attractive and can physically have sex. Not wanting sex made my partners feel unloved, and monthly encounters were not enough. Story 62. My husband had zero libido and would not do anything about it. He did that with many things, he simply did not care. Story 63. Really bad friends can be damaging. It is incredible the effect that having poor friends can have on a relationship. They are trusted sources whose comments are not met with the skepticism they sometimes deserve. If you or your partner are not adept at recognizing when they are not saying what is truly in your best interest, it can harm you both. Story 64. People often stop actively keeping the spark alive, including sexually. Many enter new relationships where excitement and sexual tension make sex feel automatic for a few years. As you get older and busier, sexual attraction may no longer be automatic. If neither partner speaks up, the sex life fades for lack of effort. Story 65. Hidden, unresolved, or expressed emotions, addressed in a healthy, safe, and legal way. Story 66. Unspoken expectations will kill even the strongest bond. Story 67. There is rampant undiagnosed mental illness. I know it's probably nowhere near what most people experience. I just wanted to complain. Story 68. Unrealistic expectations, assumptions, and poor communication. Story 69. Lack of openness about finances and the expectations surrounding them. Story 70. Not talking about what you want. Physical, emotional, sexual, and financial needs, dooms relationships. Everyone is afraid to say what they want and assumes their perfect partner will magically know. No one is a mind reader, and if you do not have the courage to express your needs, you are likely to fail in relationships. Story 71. Failing to take care of yourself and your needs, to grow as a person, and to accept personal responsibility. Story 72. I learned in my last relationship to avoid roommate syndrome at all costs. It's great to be comfortable together, but there should still be a bit of mystery, and you should try to be your best self around them. Put on concealer, wear something sexy, avoid passing gas or using the bathroom in front of each other constantly, and ask them questions as you would during the first few months of dating. Story 73. Lack of communication. It's crazy how fast things can fall apart when people stop talking to each other. Story 74. My device is about to die. There is a lack of communication. I will be blunt. There is much to add, but I will be concise here. Story 75. I do not really want to do that, but I am your partner. No, shut the fuck up. Story 76. I agree. Not being intentional is a problem. If you do not think before you speak or act, or consider how your behavior impacts others, it is a recipe for disaster. People who behave that way come across as selfish and focused only on their own needs, as if they are the only person in the relationship. In reality, the relationship cannot survive unless both people make an effort. Story 77. I have dragon breath from eating sauerkraut and mustard. Story 78. There is a lack of communication. When you are newly in love, you do not think about who will take out the trash or walk the dog. In my experience. Story 79. A lack of trust and not telling someone why you are upset causes problems. They cannot read your mind, you need to tell them sometimes. Story 80. The silent killer of most relationships is complacency. It is not the big fights or dramatic betrayals. It is when partners stop putting in effort, fail to communicate honestly, or assume love is automatic. Over time, small frustrations build up, emotional distance grows, and neither person feels truly seen or appreciated. Complacency sneaks up quietly, but it can destroy even a strong relationship if left unchecked. Story 81. Arrogance, attitude, disrespect, and most importantly, a communication gap. Story 82. Lack of sharing of activities, needs, history, and longings. Story 83. I am not the kind of person who talks all the time, but too often when I begin to say something, my husband interrupts me mid-sentence to say something completely unrelated about himself. When we get home, I always ask about his day, but he almost never asks about mine. Feels bad, so I find myself shutting down. It is exhausting. What is the point? Story 84. Assuming your partner knows what you are thinking without ever saying it aloud. Resentment builds in silence. Story 85. Lack of genuine communication occurs when you stop saying what is really bothering you and just let it go every time. Story 86. Complete lack of sexual desire is a clear sign. When a partner stops wanting the intimacy of dating and sex becomes a chore. When 5 to 10 minutes for a quick encounter feels like too much. And when the other partner watches pornography to compensate for the lack of physical touch. Story 87. Stop talking about the bedroom and stop scheduling dates. That is the silent killer. Story 88. Laziness. No longer putting in the effort because you have the girl or boy. Story 89. Missing conversations. When you stop talking, your relationship starts to end. Story 90. I think the ego is the most silent killer in every relationship. Story 91. Gym buddies, personal trainers, the new guy at work, work husbands, male best friends often dismissed as though he is just a friend. Story 92. Complacency and not investing quality time in each other. Other people cheating emotionally or physically. Story 93. After we ate tacos, we had plenty of beans. Just kidding. For my ex-wife and me, the problem was being stuck together for so long during the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic. We did not have a chance to get out and spend time with other people. We tried to give each other some space, but it was hard to do. I think there needs to be a balance between time together and time apart. Cannot be too much or too little of either. There needs to be a good balance. As mentioned above, communication is also important. Story 94. As many have said here, there is a lack of communication and effort. When there is work to be done, even with a clear path ahead, one side may simply refuse to put in the effort. Story 95. Resentment and blame. Relationships require patience, empathy, compromise, integrity, and trust to last long-term. When a partner erodes any of these, or begins to fantasize about an easier life elsewhere, there is not much that can be done. It does not matter how much one fights if the other is not willing to put in the same effort. Story 96. Carbon monoxide-sponsored dating apps. Plenty of hemoglobin.com. Story 97. Misaligned values. All other issues can be overcome through effort, but values are fundamental to who we are. If two people do not agree on value priorities to some extent, there will always be some level of disagreement. Small differences can be addressed through communication and so on, but as they accumulate, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain a romantic relationship. Story 98. As the top comment said, there is a lack of communication. It needs to be clear and direct. Both parties need to agree and cooperate. It is really simple. Story 99. The silent killers of a relationship are not spending time with your partner and a lack of communication. When you stop spending time together, the emotional distance slowly grows. When communication fades, misunderstandings, assumptions, and loneliness take its place. Eventually, love doesn't end with a fight. It just fades in silence. Story 100. I would say communication issues and a dead bedroom, based on my experience. Story 101. Cell phones. Living in electronic devices rather than in the relationship. Story 102. Lack of communication and making assumptions about the other person. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.